Quick recap. Yesterday, we have started reading on this section called Without Discoverable Beginning, the fourth section of the first chapter, which talks about samsara and how long have we wandered in samsara. The first one is using the simile of grass and sticks. If we gather all the grasses and sticks and branches and leaves from one land, and then we pick one by one, and then counted, oh, this is this man's mother, this is this man's grandmother's, until we finish picking the grasses. The sequence of man's mothers and grandmothers will not come to an end, but the grass has already been exhausted. The second simile is balls of clay. If we use this earth and then we make a clay out of this earth, and then use the same sequencing, but for fathers. We will run out of the balls of clay first before the sequence of father ends. The third one is a simile to how long an eon is. The Buddha uses the simile of the mountain, and then a man would wipe the mountain with a cloth once every 100 years. When the mountain is worn away, eliminated, an eon would still not have come to an end. Yet, we, for hundreds of thousands of eons, have wandered through this samsara. You can see with this simile how long have we wandered through. Okay, the next sutta we are going to read, the fourth one, called the river Ganges. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. The river Ganges is, I think this river is still exists in India. If you read the news, I saw it one day, the river Ganges. At Rajagaha, in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary, a certain Brahmin approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and asked him, Master Gautama, how many eons have elapsed and gone by? Brahmin, many eons have elapsed and gone by. It is not easy to count them and say there are so many eons, or so many hundreds of eons, or so many thousands of eons, or so many hundreds of thousands of eons. But is it possible to give a simile, Master Gautama? Okay, next paragraph, Sister Saikya, would you like to read?
It is possible, Brahmin, the Blessed One said. Imagine, Brahmin, the grains of sand between the point where the river Ganges originates and the point where it enters the great ocean. It is not easy to count this and say there are so many grains of sand, or so many hundreds of grains, or so many thousands of grains, or so many hundreds of thousands of grains. Brahmin, that eons that have elapsed and gone by are even more numerous than that. It is not easy to count them and say that there are so many eons, or so many hundreds of eons, or so many thousands of eons, or so many hundreds of thousands of eons. For what reason? Because, Brahmin, this samsara is without discoverable beginning. It is enough to be liberated from them. Samyutta Nikaya 15.8.
Yeah, thanks, Sister Saikya. So the fourth simile that the Buddha gives in this book is using grains of sand between the river Ganges and the point where it enters the great ocean. This one. And then the Buddha says, oh, it's not easy to count how many grains of sand are there, how many thousands of grains, how many hundreds of thousands of grains. And then similarly, he replies to the Brahmin, it is not easy to count how many eons have lapsed. Let me see. Yeah, how many eons have gone by. That's the fourth sutta for this section. Okay, the next sutta, dog on a leash. This is the Tricon. Would you like to read?
5. Dog on a leash. Monks, this samsara is without discoverable beginning. A first point is not discerned of beings roaming and wandering unhindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. There comes a time, monks, when the great ocean dries up and evaporates and no longer exists. But still I say, there is no making an end of suffering for those beings roaming and wandering unhindered by ignorance and fettered by craving.
Okay, thanks, Sister Tricon. Okay, so this sutta starts with, again, this samsara is without discoverable beginning. There's no first point discerned from we beings roaming and wandering, hindered by ignorance and fetter. The Buddha, looking through past lives, there was a time even the great ocean dries up and evaporates, no longer exists. You can imagine the earth without any ocean. But still, the Buddha says, there is no making an end of suffering for us, for those beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Okay, next, Sister Aikim, would you like to read?
There comes a time, monks, when Sinaru, the king of mountains, burns up and perishes and no longer exists. But still, I say there is no making an end of suffering for those beings roaming and wandering, unhindered by ignorance and fettered by cravings. There comes a time, monks, when the great earth burns up and perishes and no longer exists. But still, I say there is no making an end of suffering for those beings roaming and wandering, unhindered by ignorance and fettered by craving.
Thanks, Sister Aikim. And then the Buddha gave another similar scenario, the king of mountains. Probably a mountain that's really large. Burns up and perishes, no longer exists. And then the Buddha still say, there's no making an end of suffering if we keep wandering through samsara, fettered, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. The next simile, when the great earth burns up and perishes, still there's no making an end of suffering for us roaming and wandering, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Okay, the last paragraph of this chapter, Sister Billy, would you like to read?
Suppose, monks, a dog tied up on a leash was bound to a strong post or pillar. It would just keep on running and revolving around that same post or pillar. So too, the uninstructed worldling regards from form as self, feeling as self, perception as self, volitional formation as self, consciousness as self, He just keeps running and revolving around form, around feeling, around perception, around volitional formations, around consciousness. As he keeps on running and revolving around them, he is not freed from form, not freed from feeling, not freed from perception, not freed from volitional formation, not freed from consciousness. He is not freed from birth, aging, and death, not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and despair, not freed from suffering, I say. Nikaya 22.99. Thank you.
Thanks, Sister Billy, for closing this chapter for us. Okay, so this sutta concludes with a simile with a dog tied up on the leash, bound to a strong pillar. Just keep running and revolving around the same post or pillar. Yeah. You might look at the dog, oh, why is the dog keep running around? But actually, we ourselves are similar to the dog. When we regard form as self, feeling as self, perception as self, volitional formation as self, consciousness as self. Oops. We just keeps running and revolving around these 5 aggregates. And as we keep running and revolving around, we are not free from these 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness. We are not free from birth, aging, and death, not free from sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and despair, not free from suffering. Hopefully, this chapter gives you some idea, some image of samsara and how long have we wandered on in this realm of suffering. The dog running around the post or pillar. Any questions or comments? With that, we have concluded the first chapter. Yes, I can.
So how if we are the dog?
So how? Well, depends. Do you want to keep running around, or do you want to be free?
Of course, we want to be free, but how to be free?
How to be free?
So that means we have to look at our 6th sense base when it touches, the surrounding, and then not to be attached, because Buddha stressed the importance of ignorance and craving. We go on and on because we just is so attached, because we want sensual pleasures and we don't want suffering, but we don't know that actually that is the one thing that bound us to samsara. So we just keep evolving because we keep seeking pleasure, the temporary pleasure, I would say. Yeah, because we don't see the impermanence, we don't see the suffering. Yeah. So we have to practice. I think there's no shortcut. So many aeons have passed, right? Sometimes when we read, right, I just feel that we are so silly, but then when we are inside, we don't see that every day when our speech, our body have actions that are unwholesome, we can't control. We just keep repeating that habitual tendency of, clinging, likes, dislike. Yeah. So difficult. So Buddha say, enough already. Don't we want to be liberated? We want, right? Yeah, so we have to put in energy, put in effort to do that. 加油.
Yeah, well said, second.
May have to take us a few lifetime. It's not easy to give up. Yeah, especially to our loved one, that the caring, that the attachment that we have. Yeah, it's very not easy.
Yeah, don't be so pessimistic. Huh? A lot of people say many lifetimes. Huh? Maybe you still have this life. Don't look down on yourself. Yeah, but yeah, I agree with what the two of you have shared. But we also have to consider that how lucky we are to encounter the Buddha's teaching in this lifetime. If you look at just the people around you, they don't even know there's such an escape. So we also try to make full use of this opportunity. I have read in other book that said it is only through the accumulation of our past lives, the accumulated karma of our many past lives, that we can encounter the Buddha's teachings. Yeah, it's really true, sheer luck. There's one sutta that describes this. It's really true, sheer luck that we can be born as human. That's one, and it's also true, sheer luck that we encounter the Buddha's teachings. Yeah. The Buddha gave a simile of the yoke. It's the second can recall. Yeah, like every 100 years, if a turtle to poke up on the ocean and to poke a yoke, what is the chances of the turtle poking up the yoke? It's only through sheer luck. So the Buddha also parallels to be reborn as a human and to encounter the Buddha's teaching. It is only through sheer luck. So make use of it. Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can find the sutta. Yeah. Chigala Sutta the Yoke. Let me share screen. Chigala Sutta the whole, taken from Samyutta Nikaya 56.48. Suppose a blind sea turtle in the sea come out to the surface once every 100 years. Would that blind sea turtle coming to the surface once every 100 years stick his neck into the yoke with a single hole? And the monk replied, "It would be a sheer coincidence, Lord, that the blind sea turtle poked the yoke." Likewise, the Buddha mentioned, it's a sheer coincidence that one obtains a human state, the first one. A sheer coincidence that a Tathagata arises in the world. A sheer coincidence that the Dharma, doctrine and discipline is founded by a Tathagata appears in the world. Now we are here. Now we have obtained the human state. Now we are witnessing the Tathagata has arisen. Now the doctrine and discipline appears in the world. Therefore, it is our duty to contemplate, to practice the teachings. Okay, any more questions or comments? If not, let's do a dedication. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了。不愿罪障细消除， 世世常行菩萨道。Amitabha. Till we meet again, may we be guided by the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a non-wandering day ahead. Yeah, stop wandering through samsara. Okay, thanks everyone for participating. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.